want to earn more? Work less and enjoy what you do each day. It's no secret, it can be done. This podcast with Dr. T will not only educate and inspire you, it will also teach you how to do more and be more with the time you already have. It will be like a shot of adrenaline straight into the heart of your business. Here is your host, Tyson Franklin.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret with Dr. T. With me today is a repeat offender, Matt Hanham. He is in Perth, and actually I'm in his offices at Visible in Perth. Are we in the city, or we're just outside the city?
We're just outside Leadable. Yeah.
So, Matt, welcome to this week's show.
Thanks for having me, Tyson. It's exciting to be the first time I've been a guest twice on a show. So
yeah, and this is really cool that we're in your offices doing it live, which is, I don't do this very often. I've only done about half a dozen when I've had the person directly looking at me in front. Normally I'm looking at them on a computer screen, so this is cool.
Yeah, you can stare into my eyes, gazingly, or however.
I can do hand gestures. So before we get into it, just want you to just quickly explain to people your business, Visible. What is Visible?
Yeah, look, so Visible is I guess the common word is digital marketing agency, but basically we enable small businesses to amplify, their brand, their presence online. We do a lot of audio, video, and other written and other content, and help people just get their message out there. Digital is today, not just the future. It's already happening. It's right now, and businesses that can get their message out and do that with a leveraged perspective online tend to win, and that's who we like to work with and help the people behind the brands.
So is that every business? Can every business benefit by talking with you? So if I was just starting out, say for example I was a podiatrist. So I was a podiatrist, which I am a podiatrist. So let's just not say I am. Say a podiatry business was kicking off, and they went, I know I need some online content, or I need to be found. I need to be more visible.
Yeah.
And they came and met with you. What's the process you go through with them?
Yeah, look, so I actually believe every business can do it if they want to. They just have to find their angle. And with a podiatrist, as an example, it's definitely possible. But it's developing and finding a way to create content that makes sense. Now, some people have had a lot of success with humorous types of content. There's the plumber dancing to Beyonce type stories, but remarkably it works.
It's like the singing dentist.
Yeah, all those things can work. But you just either have to add value or entertain in some way, shape or form. It's about just getting your brand out there to amplify what happens, because we know it's a referral. In this type of industry, in any sort of allied health, really, you have, I guess, a couple of levels of referral. You have professional type referrals, and then other just people telling people that, hey, this person's a great guy, go and see him when they've got an issue. And what the digital game allows you to do is just amplify that, get out there a bit more, and just sort of share what you're about, and whether that's because you've got some comedy or whether that's really just you sharing quality information where people can find out more about you, about their challenges and problems before they maybe get on the phone and have a chat. So yes, the answer is, in a short, is yes. There's a lot of ways that you can create some content to attract the right clientele into your business. Okay,
so we mentioned before, we were talking about Facebook before we press record, and there was somewhere I read recently, or it was another guest that was on, and they mentioned that because a lot of people will go into, say, Facebook,
yep,
or maybe, say, Instagram, and they're on there because they're having some downtime. They want to be entertained, and all of a sudden, bang, something that you're doing pops up in their face, and it can be annoying. So is that why you're saying it's got to be entertaining? Yeah, it's got to be something that they sort of go, oh, I want to watch it because I'm in entertainment mode. I'm not in education mode.
Absolutely. So you have to firstly, you have to get the right context for the platform you're on. So if someone's on Instagram, they're browsing, they're looking at pretty pictures. They're not really in education mode. They're certainly not ready to buy something. I mean, the prime example of that is I was literally just having a meeting about an event that was run, and the event, in terms of the sales for the event, had a lot of engagement on all the ads around Instagram, but the purchases came through Facebook.
Okay.
So the same people have seen these ads on both platforms, but when they're in they're on Instagram, they're in browse mode, they're looking, they might engage and comment, but they're not ready to sort of pull out their credit card and.
So are you
and
putting
do a transaction.
on Instagram, are you using just like pretty visuals, visual
right.
images, something that just captures their attention, but you're not there to try and educate or do anything. It's just like, hey, we're here, and you take note and you see it a number of times. Then on Facebook, they will do something a little bit different, which gives them a little bit more information.
That's right. So you sort of just make sure that on the different platforms, you're sharing appropriate content. So when you're then browsing on Facebook, you might be a little bit more receptive. I wouldn't, again, go for the hard sell, but provide some more information there, but maybe just some more interesting or, humorous content if that's the way you want to go. It's not usually what I recommend, but you might have more of a personal approach, someone's face, engaging, some sort of engaging imagery, and that's because that's what the platform is, or stay off it, and head towards Facebook and write a couple of like great blogs and share them there where you're adding some value to people that it might make sense. But that's I think one of the things people get so wrong is thinking that they can just blast sell in different places, and they don't think about what the people are actually doing when they're on the platform. If they're on Instagram at 7:30 at night and they're just getting their kids off to bed or whatever that looks like, they're not going to buy something from you right now. They're probably not going to book an appointment for their podiatrist unless there's a quick way to get through and book one online. They're not doing that. So that's where people get it wrong. It's not a computer. It's a person on the other side of the phone or wherever they are that they're browsing this stuff. And you have to think about what that human will be doing.
So what's your opinion of people sharing an interest they do attached to the business? So I know a couple of guys who right into wine, for example. They're podiatrists and they love wine. And I've said, maybe you should be sharing your expertise in wine and doing short videos and sharing that on different places. And people will pick up that you are a podiatrist. You may even mention, after a hard day in my podiatry business, this is my wine of choice this week. This is what I like. So you're doing a wine review, but just sort of letting people know about your business at the same time. And I've got another guy that I know who is a mechanic, and he does a lot of videos. But him and a couple of friends get together, and during the football season, they've got a particular team that they support. So every week they'll do a roundup of what's coming up that week, or a review of what the past week. They bag every other team like there's no tomorrow, except their team. Their team is always awesome, but they're shooting the videos actually from his mechanic shop, and they're so entertaining to watch. They don't go for very long. What you're thinking of people bringing in a passion or something they really like, and intertwining it with their business and promoting the business, but without saying, "Hey, we're promoting my business."
Yeah, look, they're two amazing examples, because when I went to rewind back to the start, I said you can make it work for any business.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I meant. What you really need is that publicity. And you want, if you're a great guy or a great gal and that you're good at what you do in your profession, you just need more people to know you. And know that that's what you do. You don't need to be always adding value specific to podiatry as the example. You can share one information, but it just has to be authentic to you. So there's another story to add to that of a guy, I think he's New York based, and he's a lawyer. And although there is some law-based podcasts and things out there, but no one really wants to hear him talk about his corporate law. So he has a podcast about golf.
See, that's a great idea. I heard of an accountant once who had his business set up is in a building next to a golf course, and you could actually open up his office doors, go out into his balcony, and while you were talking, you could actually drive golf balls onto this fairway.
That's so cool.
It's like a driving range out from his accounting office, and he said his billable hours with every client who liked golf was like double once he started doing that.
Because people didn't mind
range. Well, yeah, because if you're only in there for normally 30 minutes, you'd hang around for an hour because you didn't mind hitting golf balls and you're talking at the same time. But so what you're saying is that lawyer talked about golf, but everybody knew he was a corporate lawyer.
That's right. So naturally, and because it's the thing, you can't just attack people with ads. So naturally, when someone, hang on, I need a corporate lawyer. Oh, well, I know a corporate lawyer. He's the guy I listen to every week on this golfing podcast. So you don't.
How does he introduce himself? Does he actually say, "Hi, I'm Joe Bloggs, and I'm a corporate lawyer, and I'm going to talk about golf"? How does he? What's his knack of bringing it into the conversation?
No, I'm not exactly sure, but my approach would be, because I haven't actually listened to this podcast, I've just heard this story about this guy, but my approach would be that you would just subtly just place that through, say, this is what I do. I assume he's talking about the fact that he's an amateur golfer and he has these challenges, and he probably talks about, I just came from this transaction and this happened and I got down on the golf course late. And, and I had this struggle. I assume, there's
it's
a lot
part of the story.
Yeah, you just make it part of his life and story. And I think that's where people, and certainly in podiatry, I'd be building yourself and thinking of yourself as a personal brand rather than, hey, I'm a podiatrist. That's just one of the pieces. And sure, it's a big piece, but it's one of the pieces of your whole personality and what you'd share. If it's wine, if it's golf, if it's, you're in your mechanic shop and you use that as the backdrop.
It works so well.
That's fantastic, So there's always a way, because we're not just one-dimensional as people. We've got, other things that are, make us interesting.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's the authenticity that makes it real. So there'd be no point me getting up there talking about wine when I just like to drink it. Yep. I couldn't tell you what label it was when I drank it. I either like it or I don't. And even though I know a little bit about wines, but I'm not passionate about wines. Yeah. Whereas if I was talking about, say, MMA, UFC, cage fighting, I absolutely love it. And I could talk about that all day. So I could actually do a review on fights that happened over the weekend and what I liked and what I didn't like. And you could bring that into the actual business that you do. You
can. I mean, you have to be a little careful that it still makes sense to your target audience as well. Yeah. That's the only challenge. But yeah, look, I would completely agree with that. And that's where I think what we forget is, hey, let me start a Facebook page. Everyone else is doing it. I better do that. I've got my new podiatrist in Newcastle. Podiatry clinic's open, and let me just post 7 posts, being the same 7 posts that everyone else has done. Here's 2 pictures of two feet, and here's Alice, and she works here as well. And okay, why would someone want to like or follow you? Like, what are you providing? Like, what entertainment? What information? That's where people lose sight, and that's where they need to bring in these other disciplines or interests and activities that they get up to, and that it's been done so well in so many different ways. And I think that's the point, is you've just got to go, all right, I can't just do what everyone else is doing. I need to show my differences, my idiosyncrasies, whatever I've got to make us stand out. And it doesn't have to be all about the craft. Often is what will make you win has nothing to do with the craft.
Okay, so and when I was mentioning about cage fighting at MMA, and you said, "Oh, that's if it appeals to your audience," but if you're really passionate about something, you can still do that, and there's always going to be that small audience that may not be your actual target audience, but you can still have some fun with it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I was just saying, be mindful that if your interest is so crazy, not that is. I'm just saying what you need to consider, that if the person who's making the buying decision around, let's say in the family, around the product or service that you're selling, just make sure that you're not crafting a brand around something that just makes no sense to them.
Yeah, so if somebody had a health food store and you're trying to attract people who are vegans, and next to you got an interest in, I shoot pigs on the weekend, and you're showing all these pig shooting and cutting them up. You sort of go, I'm very passionate about shooting pigs and slaughtering them on video, but is my audience who are vegans really going to want to see that? So that's just complete opposites. Yeah.
So there will always be an audience, and that one may be one being you, but that's exactly what I mean. So MMA, look, great. And if you were focused on podiatry and you had this MMA focus, and then the only variable for me might be, okay, how big is your city or town?
Yeah.
Because that's the only, if you're in a tiny little town and there was 2 of you and you're sort of fighting off against each other for clients, and then you were you didn't make sense because there wasn't even an MMA gym in the town, then you're in trouble. But if you are in a bigger city and you can niche in, and they're the clients you want to work with, for example, people that have issues and they're related to, and you want to help them in their endeavors for fighting, then there is a niche in that business. There probably is a big enough niche for you to focus on that area. So you've got a lot of choices. Just be mindful of, what do you like? What do you think your clients like? And how do you, but most importantly, you have to create the content. So if you're not interested in it, you're going to find it really difficult. So you have to be authentic to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I totally get that about the MMA thing. And what's really funny about MMA is you'll talk to certain people that you think, there's no way that they would like this. And you'll say, I'm going to go and watch the UFC fights this weekend. And they'll go, I just absolutely love it. And it'll be like this skinny accountant that, I go, seriously? You actually like? They go, I just absolutely love it. Can't get enough of it. Yeah. And then you'll have somebody else that you meet, a big burly bloke, and you think, I'm going to go and watch the fights this weekend. What are you doing? And they go, no, I don't like that. I don't like violence. When I see blood, no, not at all. Thank you very much. So it's interesting. You don't know who's going to like what. Also making sure that, is there a niche in that thing? So like with, say, mixed martial arts, there's a lot of kicking involved. Therefore, there's a lot of kicking. There's a lot of foot injuries.
Yeah, there you go.
And a lot of it's all done bare feet.
Yep.
So there are a lot of foot injuries. So you could sort of wind that in. Not that I'm saying that you would actually do that.
Well, no, but you really could. And someone, let's say, for example, in a larger metropolis, let's say Sydney, Sydney, Australia, it might make a lot of sense. And if you enjoy MMA and you find a niche there, then very quickly you could get the word out to all the gyms around town that there's a specialist in that space, which I would assume probably doesn't exist right now.
I don't think it does.
And you could very well have a better business than you might have today by changing that focus if it's truly what you're passionate about.
Yeah. I was talking to a dentist who rides a Harley, and I said to him, I'm surprised you don't bring that into your social media a little bit more, that you ride a Harley. And he's like, I'm a bit frightened that if I do that, all of a sudden I'm just going to attract bikies into my dental clinic. And I went, do you know how many people ride Harleys who are not bikies? Yeah, I said, you're not a bikie. I said, you are definitely not a bikie. And he's like, I never thought about that. And he's the sort of person that, when I met him and then I saw that he rode a Harley, I went, wow, I never really equated that you would be a Harley rider. But then nearly all the Harley riders I know, you wouldn't know they were Harley riders.
It can happen across the board. I mean, one other sport that I love all sports, but I'm very passionate about basketball. And I was having a conversation the other day, and it was actually with an eye doctor. And I think I basically won that business, even though he was about to go check with 2 or 3 other people, because that was his plan, to go and talk with 2 or 3 or 4 people and get their opinion, because we bonded over a couple of sentences in an email after we'd had a quick chat about it, a common love of basketball, and we talked about the NBA and what a couple of teams were doing, and it didn't become apparent until the end of our conversation, where it just popped in for some reason. And I think I mentioned something off the cuff, and I would never have thought this guy was also a basketballer.
Yeah. But sometimes it could be a terminology, a word that you use. Yeah. Like I'm reading a book at the moment called Own the Day.
Yeah.
And he always talks at the end of his chapter, he gives you 3 pointers.
Okay.
But he loves basketball. He loves basketball. And I think these are like equating to a 3-point shot.
Yeah. That's Aubrey Marcus, right?
Yes,
yeah,
I think so.
I've got that on my I need to read next kind of
actually,
pile.
I'm not reading it. It's an Audible book.
Yeah. Well, need to read. Listen, for me, it's the same thing. I use Audible as well. But I've got that on my list. But you're right, terminology, something pops out. But the point there was, he revealed a little bit about him. I'd revealed a little bit about myself. So same as the dentist, maybe there's 5-10% growth in his business available to him by sharing that he has a love of bikes.
Yeah.
And maybe that goes as simple as a couple of images on their social media, maybe a small, little model or something in the desk or in the reception area, whatever you might do, just to sort of share that, hey, this is my passion. And we often see these more. Sometimes people just call it eccentric, right? And you go somewhere and you're like, oh, this is an interesting looking clinic or whatever it looks like, but it's just different. But it's different, and I think it probably makes sense. I would say it would help them in their endeavour.
Well, I know before I sold my clinic, we had sort of started theming everything. I think I mentioned it to you.
Yeah.
And instead of having consultation rooms, each room was themed with a superhero.
Yeah.
And we had the Spider-Man room and the Superman room, and my office was the Invisible Man, and the lab was Professor X, and my wife's office was Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And it was surprising when we were first doing it, the people that work with me were going, oh, this is a bit odd. Kids loved it.
Yeah.
Kids would come in and as soon as they go, oh, that's Green Lantern. That they knew all the emblems, and then it just got the parents talking, and it was a conversation piece, and then but it also themed in with our social media at the time. All of a sudden, we buy a new calendar for the clinic. We buy a superhero calendar, and we take a photo of it, and that just fitted in with the theme that we were running with. And then when we sold it, that all got taken down.
and I'm sure they're probably worse off for it. And that's the thing, even if you look at a social media perspective, and this is what I'll have conversations with clients about, it's like, if you do something like that, you at least create something to talk about.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you've created a point of difference. If I were just to follow that page now, and it's just gone back to being very just vanilla and bland and about, it's probably not posting or posting very little right now, I could have and would have probably actually followed the page prior, where it was a bit more fun. You're seeing kids or people engage with what you'd painted on the walls, and talking about had these superhero themes. Like there's just more interesting content, and that's what I mean by entertaining. You don't have to be the next stand-up comic.
Yeah.
It's about just doing something a little bit different, and if it aligns with you, then it becomes easy. And the minute you sort of shed that sort of corporate veil, and the wrong use of the word, but that corporate barrier that we all put up around us just looking like everyone else in our profession, people will just be drawn to you. The right ones and the ones that make sense will stay.
The part that was interesting with all that is as we were getting more into it, and the longer it went on, the more you would have patients turning up and saying, oh, I was out at such and such shop down here and they've got some new figurines that have just come in. Or one of the staff would be away on a holiday and they'd come back with, like say drink coasters, for example, something like that. It wasn't a drink coaster, but you just had these drink coasters that had Superman or something on there. So all of a sudden these things just started coming into the clinic. And if I hadn't sold it, I think a couple of years down the track, it would have really looked pretty cool. There was a podiatrist I know in America, and his whole reception area, I haven't seen it, but they reckon you walk into his reception through the front door, and he's a mad Wizard of Oz fan. And it's the yellow brick road all the way up to his reception counter, and behind the whole reception counter is supposed to be done up like the Wizard of Oz type theme, and that's his theme right through the whole clinic. And people talk about it; it gets mentioned in the media.
See, that's what I'm saying. You just need that publicity. You don't necessarily need, it'll only amplify who you are. And if you've got a good person with good values and you're good at what you do, then amplifying some publicity in any way that happens is a great thing. Apart from a negative way, you don't go commit a crime to get yourself on the news. But if you're just getting your name and your voice out there a little bit more, whether it's through golf or superheroes or however you do it, it's a positive. You don't have to be all about the craft, but they'll even gain a level of rapport around what you do there. And then when you do open your mouth and start talking about the craft, it makes sense. You'll just look confident. You look like you're owning your space, and business will be better for it. Why did you do it? I mean, did you? It would have been a challenge at the time. This is a while ago now, when you've gone and turned your whole clinic into a superhero sort of replica space.
Yeah, I hadn't gone crazy with it. We'd sort of just started touching on it, where we had every room had at least a figurine in there, something on the wall. Every door had an emblem on there of which superhero it was. Calendars on the walls. Yeah. In the reception area, we had magazines. We'd had comics, and we still had magazines, but we still had comic books. And then we had an encyclopedia of superheroes that people had so many hundred superheroes in there. How they started their superpower and that type of thing. How it got started, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm a big kid, and I think it started from that. That I think in my actual room, it started where I was putting things in my room, and I went, wow, this would be good to do this in one of the other rooms. And it sort of the idea just grew. And how I knew it was an idea that was worth pursuing is my wife agreed with me. See, I've had some ideas where I'll throw them at my wife and she's gone, just silence. Or it gives you, that look. I can't actually do that look on a podcast. She gives you this look. And you go, okay, well, maybe it wasn't one of my best ones. But when I mentioned this to her, or we were talking about it, she was getting excited about it.
Yeah.
She's going, we could do this and we could do that, and then we could have certain superhero days, and You could know when Superman's birth, because all superheroes have a birthday, and you could celebrate different things, and we could bring that into social media. And it actually got exciting. It got really, really exciting. I thought it was fun.
I think that's when you know, right? So for someone listening, if you're wondering what you could write about, like literally just get a piece of paper out and start writing a list, or, write a circle in the middle, and, write you as your personal, write your name down there, and just start drawing lines off and just brainstorming things. And I think you'll get excited about something.
Yeah.
I think you'll work it out, and then you can brainstorm off that. And it doesn't have to be everything. Like you don't have, let's say, a podiatry, page and website that's all about Spider-Man, but there's just an element of it there. And it just, I think you're right. I mean, it becomes obvious because
I think there's
you need
a line,
to bring the
though,
passion with it, right?
Yeah, but I also think there's a line between being tacky. Like if all of a sudden they rocked up and I had a cape on.
Yeah, that might
probably
be
eventually
awkward. Not tacky, awkward.
Yeah, it may have happened eventually, but it could have done that on a special day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you can take a passion, you can theme something, you can have fun with it. But I also think, regardless of your business, depending what sort of business you've got, there's got to be that professional line of, say my business, we were still a podiatry clinic. We were there to treat people, fix problems, keep people moving, keep them healthy and all that. So, you had to be sensible at the same time.
Oh, and that's probably the key point behind it all. It's bringing a few quirks in is not about taking the professionalism and everything out of it at all. It's just adding a bit of colour, a bit of life.
But even when we're sitting here in your room now and I'm looking behind you and I look up on you've got a bookshelf behind, I'll just describe it. We have a bookshelf and there's a ton of crap on this shelf. Well, it's not crap, actually. It's quite interesting. Other than you've got the Hibiki whiskey up there, Monkey Shoulder. I have both those. But what I notice is you've got an old transistor radio. You've got a really old phone that doesn't even have the dialing thing on it, so it must just be one of those you wind it. Correct. So what's the story behind those? Is this part of even yourself? This is something you're collecting?
Well, sort of collecting. I mean, these were things that were sort of sitting in my home study, but behind me is kind of a mixture of things related to what we're doing right now, podcasting, and I guess who I am. If I look back, I'm probably not talking into the microphone very well, but the old communication pieces were actually, we moved into a property that was my wife's grandfather actually built it. Yeah. And when we moved into that property, I was in there's all these old sheds down the back, and it's a big property, and there was a couple of pieces in there, the old radio and the telephone, and I thought they were perfect for two reasons. One, they obviously mean something, down in the family, but what we do is communicate. I mean, we're podcasting right here. Everything we do on social media and content creation is a communication piece, and that's why they're there. There's some great books behind me. Some are about business, basketball. There's whiskies up. There are leftovers from... Actually, your book's up there too, Tyson.
I did. I noticed that when I came in. I did. When I looked up there, I saw you. Oh, there's books on the shelf. I said, well, mine's there. And I went, oh, there it is.
There it is. That's one.
Book number 2, yes.
Book number 2 is up there of yours, Tyson. And look, everything up there is then a reflection of podcasting. I mean, those whiskies are leftover whiskies from my Simple Minds podcast, where we sit down and 6 guys unpack 2 or 3 topics and try and just talk about things that men don't talk about. And we usually have that over a drink. And those whiskies are left over from...
How often do you do that show?
It's a weekly show. We've actually had a small hiatus, and we're kickstarting now. We were doing it every Friday afternoon.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense, but it was a bit of a time challenge for 6 people that were running their businesses and everything else. So we're now trialling batching it, and that's actually happening next week. And we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, we might be back in here every Friday afternoon.
So you could sit there and do a whole day and pump out 8 or 10 episodes and just finish the bottle.
Well, we're going to...
Would that be messy by the time you get to episode 10?
Well, we're not going to have full drinks. We're going to just taste now, and we're probably going to do 6.
And you've got a podcast too, Amplify Your Business.
Yep, that's right.
And that's available everywhere if people want to listen to it?
It's available on as many possible platforms as I can find to put them. So, Amplify Your Business. And that one is where I just like to talk to and mainly interview people and just find out kind of business stories for business owners in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I've listened to your podcast a few times, and it's one of my favourite ones.
There's a great, of course, and there's a great episode with you on there.
Oh, there is too. Yes, I can't remember the number,
I can't either at the moment, but that is actually a great episode, and that was very enjoyable chatting with you. You're my first first episode where I had a remote guest.
Oh, that's right, because normally you're doing it live. So me sitting in front of you now is quite comfortable for you and extremely awkward for me.
Well, except it's your show. So
Yes.
usually it's me asking the question. So it's actually...
That's good.
I
Both
don't
awkward.
sort of get interviewed that often in reverse. So
before I press record too, I think everything we've spoken about, I think is great because it's not what we planned to talk about.
yeah.
Just beforehand, we mentioned something about what was it? Facebook
Custom audiences.
custom audiences. Can we just talk about what custom audiences is all about and how do people go about using custom audiences in Facebook? Well, that's sort of what we spoke about at the beginning. We started on Facebook and Instagram. And talking about being authentic and telling a story. And on your last podcast, the episode was called Micro Storytelling. And if you want more information on that, I will have a link in the show notes so you can go check that episode out. But we were talking about Facebook and custom audiences. How do people get started with custom audiences?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously you can have a dig around. I'm sure if you Google it, there's a lot of ways to get in there quickly and technically tell you your way in. But just generally what it is you can use, like if you have a list of emails of, let's say it's your mailing list, for example, and there's the 300 or 400 people that you have on that mailing list, you can actually input that list into Facebook, and Facebook can create an audience off those. Now, what it does is it goes and finds the emails. Phone numbers actually work as well. So mobile numbers are another way. If you have, let's say you have a clinic and you have, several hundred mobile numbers, and if you wanted to advertise to people, you could put these numbers and email addresses into the system, and Facebook will create what's called a custom audience. And so it'll be bigger than just those few people. Facebook will take the attributes that align with those people and their similarities and build out a bigger audience set for you.
Which is great if you've got a small niched audience that you wanted to talk to. So if I wanted to talk, if I was running workshops and I was talking to podiatrists and I wanted to connect with more podiatrists, and I've already got 200 names and email addresses, I put that into the custom audience and it will find other people that have got the same or similar attributes.
It will. So it'll find, it's not going to be perfectly aligned to exactly who you want to speak with, but if you're talking about an audience that maybe has hundreds or a couple of thousand, then you might, use that to build up a slightly bigger audience. And you can still then carve it down. So you could get that audience and then make sure they're just in Queensland. You can still make some adjustments to those lists as well, but it's just a good way for...
And that's all done through the normal Facebook page?
Yeah, well, if you go into Ads Manager and work through that, if you've been doing any advertising through Facebook, not sort of just boosting posts, but in the back end, then it's all in there and available to you. And I would assume the best place to get the instruction on that is just through Facebook, which is they have their blueprint and other resources.
Are people
online.
better to do that themselves, or it's be a silly question? Here comes a silly question from Tyson. It's not a silly question. I think it's a sensible question, but and I think you will give me a nice answer. Is somebody better to do it themselves and mess around with it, or are they better to come and talk to someone like you and say, this is what I want to do. Can you help me get this set up the right way?
Yep. Look, the honest answer is, if you're the type of person...
That's why I asked you, because I want an honest answer.
Yeah, look, if you're the type of person that wants to get in there and wants to figure it out and wants to do it all yourself, then, go for it. You can nut it out. Trial and error will work. But a lot of people realise that, look, their highest and best use is not mucking around, spending all day or weekend on that, and they should just pay someone to get some help and get some quality advice.
So does it take a long time to put together? Like if you've got 200 email addresses, how hard is it to go in and go, bang, there's my 200 email, go and find me some more people?
It's a couple of minutes worth of exercise for someone that knows what they're doing. And it's one small task that would need to be attached to a bigger strategy, and that's the challenge. So if you have the ability to go, look, I have this strategy, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is, I'm going to set up this audience and test this against other audiences, because that's what I'd also recommend. Like, it may not be the best outcome for you to try to use this audience, but you run that audience and then you run another audience and you see how it works, because Facebook's very smart. If you put any old ad up about anything, it will try to deliver it to people that it thinks will engage.
So if you had a business and within your business you've got a number of people, men, women, different ages and all that, you go, no, my target audience is women 30 to 35 with children. So you identify those people in your business already. You grab their email addresses.
Yep, you can do that.
And you put that into the custom audiences. And Facebook, ideally,
Yep.
we'll go and find a lot of other people in that same age bracket who may have an interest in children or other things and start spreading that message out to them.
Yep, that's right. So you set up that audience, and then when you run ads, you run those ads to that audience directly. And that's how you can test. So you run that ad to that audience, and then you might run it to a generalized audience. And you might find that one's outperforming the other. There's a lot of variables, especially content too. So it's really good to use the same content and test them across different audiences, and then try again with some other content and test them across multiple audiences.
And we got into this subject because we were talking about sometimes when you go to just select an audience, the audience group is too small.
Yeah.
And in Facebook ads, it just goes, nah.
That's right.
Sorry. Try again. Can you add another 1 million people to it, please?
So if you've got an incredibly good niche, you have an incredible advantage in that you've got a really good niche and a small group of people, and probably there's not too many people targeting them. Your disadvantage, especially on Facebook, is that, your audience might be too small.
Yeah, but which is surprising. Say, for example, say we're talking about podiatrists, and then if I was running a workshop and I wanted to just target podiatrists, I know that Facebook won't let me do that because it says, sorry, this audience is too small. Yeah. So you've got to then add either other professions, which may not be who you want to talk to, or you've got to just add in other things. So therefore, the audience is bigger, but it's not really the audience that you want. So custom audiences is a far better way of doing it.
It's definitely worth a try. It's definitely
it's one way of doing it.
It's one way of doing it, and it's often it can be useful, but it's just one of many methods that we would usually try, like when we're working with any form of business really. But you can also it'll come up as an interest. There's a lot of things that I would get targeted with because I work with other businesses that I might get targeted with ads relating to marketing and dental practice because I've worked with them.
Oh, true. Okay.
And I've engaged with a lot of that type of content, and that's what Facebook knows. But there's no harm in that. It's just and if you were going to run an ad in a newspaper, you'd hit far more people that have no interest whatsoever in what you're talking about than the sort of targeted approach that this provides.
No, that makes sense. And what we're talking about here, these are tactics. First, you need to sit back and work out what is your strategy.
Yep. Go through these 6 pillars.
Yeah.
Or is it 6 pillars?
6 pillars of marketing. Yeah. Well, 6 pillars of marketing is out of my book. Yeah. But we were talking about this before. I said when I wrote book 1, I said all pillars were equal. When I wrote book 2, my thinking changed a little bit, and I was going, pillar number 6, which is online marketing, is the main pillar. It's something you just must be doing all the time. Pillar 1 to 5, they're equal, but you need to be able to be rotating them and working with them at different times, and you need to focus on different areas. But it's a bit before you really even get to that, first you need to know what is your strategy, because even what we're talking about with target audiences, and even whether we're doing video or even if you were going to start a podcast, and use audio, first it's what are you trying to do? Yeah. What's the purpose of what you're trying to do, and then which tactic is going to best suit that?
Yeah, and we talked about those, using golf or other types of interests, MMA. That's where you have to think about that. You go back to that starting point, and in your strategy, decide what are the different content areas and topics you want to talk about, and then work out how and where you deliver all that to everyone.
Yeah, so you might and you might have like we said before, you could have a passion about ice cream, but if your business is weight loss,
you may have a challenge there, unless you've got some magical weight loss
ice cream.
Weight loss ice cream that'd be a good business.
How good? If anyone's listening to this, and you can come up with a weight loss ice cream. I love ice cream, but I don't eat it all the time because it's not always the best thing.
It's not.
So Matt, I want to thank you for being a repeat offender. How can people reach out and contact you if they want to know more or talk to you more about whether it's targeting Facebook groups or custom audiences? I got that wrong, or just need help with the social media with the services you offer?
Yep. Well, look, services we offer, the business is visible.com.au, VISIBLE. I have to often spell that out because sometimes people don't know how to spell visible, which is an interesting...
That's funny, yeah.
As a side note, but there's often an A thrown in there.
Visable.
Yeah. So visible. And we're based in Perth, but work with people all over. So there's no real challenge there if it's not a challenge for you. Myself, all my socials are Matt, Matt, Hanham, Hanham. You can hit me on Instagram if you want to DM me there. Very, very soon there'll be a website which will host my podcast and everything else. So that'll be mattjhanham.com. .com. And I think by the time this is live, that will be live. So
okay, what's your plan on getting that live?
What's my plan?
Yeah, so when are you hoping to have that live? So I'll make sure I can hold this back.
Okay, it's it should be live in 14 days.
Oh yeah, no, you'll be fine. So it is now live.
It's now live.
It is now live. That website is live because I know this is going to come out in more than 14 days' time.
Perfect.
Okay, Matt, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tyson.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Matt Hanham today from Visible. That's visible.com.au. And just remember, when you're creating content, it's not all about the craft that you do. That can sometimes get boring if you're putting that online. Think about other things that you're interested in, and can you bring that into your social media, something that you're interested, something that you're passionate about, and don't be afraid to let your clients, patients, or customers know what you do in your spare time, especially if it matches and makes sense with your business. But as we said, if you like slaughtering pigs on the weekend and you have a business where you deal with vegans, it's probably not a good idea. So before I go, I just want to let you know, if you're a podiatrist, you may want to go and check out my other podcast, the Podiatry Legends podcast. And if you're not a podiatrist, I think you'll enjoy it as well. Some of the stories, insights, and business wisdom that some of my guests share, I think will surprise you, and it will open your mind up to a lot of other ideas that you may be able to apply in your own business. I also have a couple of friends' podcasts that I want to give a shout out to. One is the Savvy Dentist podcast, which is pretty awesome, with Dr. Jesse Green. And one of my favorite podcasts is called Unstructured with Eric Hunley. He talks to some amazing people, FBI or ex-FBI agents. It's just incredible, the people he actually gets on a show, and I listen to it on a regular basis. One of the other shows I really like is called In Top Form. So go and check out those 3 podcasts. I'm sure you will enjoy it, but make sure you keep coming back and listening to this one and telling your friends that it's no secret Dr. T exists. Okay, that's it from me. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.